Check out what I found this morning, guys. This is appropriate. Dopamine Nation, she says.
Dopamine Nation. And this conversation has been so interesting because this world is so full of stimulus right now, and we are drowning in dopamine, and we may not even realize it. So this has been so enlightening. So for my viewers and listeners, what is the best way that we can assess our relationship with dopamine?
Yeah, so I think if there's a substance or behavior that you're wondering if you consume too much of it too often, or you know you do, you can try something called a dopamine fast. Now, that's just sort of a metaphorical name for taking a break from your drug of choice, whether it's video games or TikTok or cannabis or alcohol. It's an experiment, and I really do introduce it to patients as an experiment. So it would be, taking. We usually recommend taking 4 weeks of abstinence from our drug of choice, knowing that we will feel worse before we will feel better. Why will we feel worse? Because when we first take the reward off the pleasure side of the balance, those gremlins accumulating on the pain side weigh us down to the side of pain, and we go into withdrawal. And the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria, and craving.
So you see those actual physical manifestations, even if your drug of choice is not like a chemical substance, if it's, a phone or social media or a video game or a television show or binge reading, you can see that physical anxiety and sleeplessness and all that. Wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing how dependent we can be on these digital devices and digital media, and how when we try to stop, we literally experience a physiologic withdrawal. And as you know, I talk about in my book, my own addiction to romance novels, which the Twilight Saga was my gateway drug. And then I got a Kindle, and then there was no barrier to downloading one book right after, finishing another. And pretty soon I found myself, staying up late into the night, reading, going to bed, to work tired the next day, reading instead of doing things I value, like spending time with my children and husband, ultimately taking romance novels to work and reading in the 10 minutes between patients. So when I decided myself that it was time for me to take a break, essentially I experienced all of those symptoms of withdrawal as well.
Was having that addiction for you helpful for you and your work with your patients? And by the way, like you said, it is such a spectrum, because when I was reading about your addiction to reading, I was like, well, that doesn't seem so bad, right?
Right.
Reading.
Right.
But like you said, when it starts to interfere with your work and your life and your family, it's a real problem. But some of the patients that you talk about in your book, their addictions were a whole other level.
Yeah, I mean, there is no doubt that it is a spectrum, that I had a very minor version of this phenomenon. But what was compelling for me was how much the pattern looked exactly like my patients with really severe and life-threatening addictions. And the pattern essentially looks the same also whether you're addicted to drugs or to a behavior. We start out using for typically one of two reasons, either to have fun or to solve a problem. If the substance or behavior works for us, we return to using it again and again. Over time, our brain changes. Now we need more of the substance in more potent forms to get the same effect. And eventually we find ourselves marshaling all available resources to getting our drug, using our drug, hiding drug use in some cases, and starting all over again. So it is amazing how, because our reward pathways are conserved over millions of years of evolution and across species largely unchanged, we all essentially reflexively approach pleasure and avoid pain. Hence, we're all vulnerable to addiction, especially in today's drugified world.
But you're not the fun police, right? You want us to have
fun. Thank you.
Thank
you for saying that.
We're all looking for joy. We're chasing joy.
Right.
We're chasing happiness and love and all those things that I think of as like sparkly dopamine. So
Yes.
what's the
And we
balance?
wouldn't be human. We wouldn't be human if we
Right.
weren't
So how do I
thinking
know when I'm
dopamine.
like I've gone too far? There's
Yeah.
healthy dopamine, right? There's the
Yes.
good
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And when you think about how we were evolved to get our dopamine, again, we were evolved to have to like walk tens of kilometers every day to find one berry bush with 3 berries on it. Do you know what I mean? So that's the key. So when you think about back to those gremlins, the best way to get our dopamine is actually by pressing on the pain side first. And then those gremlins will reverse and go on the pleasure side, and we will get our dopamine indirectly as our body responds to what it senses as injury
Interesting.
or intense survival need. So I am not advocating self-cutting, although cutting does work in this way. When we cut ourselves, it releases endogenous
That's why it
opioids,
does that?
which then releases dopamine, which is why people do the cutting. The problem is that's not a healthy thing to do. We're injuring ourselves, but it also depletes itself very quickly.
Wow.
Much better to use what we call hormesis, or right-sized pain. Not too much, not too little. The healthy kind of pain that you get from moderate exercise. Some people use ice cold water immersion, or even just doing anything that requires sustained effortful engagement. So, and also, indulgences in moderation are okay. Again, not saying here people should never use intoxicants, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying use in moderation, don't use too much, leave enough time in between for the gremlins to hop off so that homeostasis can be restored.
Wow. Okay, this is great. We got to take a quick break. But when we come back, I'm going to put Dr. Anna to the test and reveal an addiction of my own and see
All right, here
her
we go.
practical tips.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
to straighten me out, okay, when we come back. Welcome back to Mom. I've been chatting with Dr. Anna Lemke, author of Dopamine Nation, a #1 New York Times bestseller. It shot to the top of the list, wildly popular. Some people call it revelatory. I mean, it is a great, great read and interesting for anyone because we are all drowning in dopamine and
Unless
we may
you're
not even
deficient.
realize it. So kind of like realizing it is the first step. So before the break, I was saying that I needed some help with an addiction of my own. For people who have been a fan of Mom, they already know that I am totally hooked to my phone, like so many of us. And it's horrible. I have 2 little kids, and I'm so concerned that they're just going to know the top of my head, Now, I feel like my situation is a little different being that I'm a content creator, and so the world of Instagram and social media is part of my business. But I think a lot of people out there who have a small business or a large business, they're doing their marketing through social. Social media is kind of like a part of the business. I don't know if it's the social media I'm addicted to, the phone itself, if it's the email, the text, the whole ball of wax. But I know you recommend, because I read the book, you recommend abstinence for 30 days when you're trying to come off of your drug of choice. For you, it was the romance novels. For other people, it could be drugs. It could be like an actual, chemical substance. But when you use your phone every single day, practically speaking,
You can't.
asking for a friend, how do we do that? How do you recommend doing that to for your patients?
Yeah, so it's a great question and a really important one, because many people need their phones because their phones are deeply embedded in their work and the way they communicate with their families. People feel their phones are important to making everybody safer. So I'm not necessarily saying get rid of the phone. I mean, I do recommend that in like life-threatening cases. But, the average person, what I would suggest is identify what is the behavior on the phone that specifically causes the compulsive overuse. Try to eliminate that. Is it a certain, website? Is it a certain social media interface? Do you really need to be on Instagram for your work? Can you, in your case, hire somebody else to manage some of that interfacing so that you don't have to? If you have to do it,
That's a good idea.
is there a specific behavior, or again, a specific app or something that just really gets you that you could potentially eliminate for a period of time?
Or maybe even just have it on my desktop computer so I'm not, it's not there. I mean, we're going to need more sessions if we're going to unpack this because the relinquishing of control to let someone else do my thing and
No way.
not going to happen.
Yeah, right.
Yes, but and I want parents to understand we're adults and we are getting sucked into this. Our children, these social media apps are literally designed to be addictive.
They are.
And they are.
They are.
And
Yep,
and so it can be so hard. I will say I did give up TikTok. That I really don't use for business. I'm not really creating on there. I was just consuming. And it's like a slot machine, you know? It's like ding, 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 ding. Oh, it's something I like. Dopamine hit. And I was at least self-aware enough to know that this was not healthy before I read your book. So all this is like kind of intersecting.
Yes.
But what really got me is I had a terrible night's sleep after looking at TikTok for like 2 hours. And I was dreaming in fragments, like in TikTok.
In TikTok videos.
And I woke up and I deleted the app from my phone. I said, that is enough. And, you know, I have a fully mature brain, supposedly. But children and those whose brains aren't fully formed, how can they ever, you know, beat the house?
Yeah, it's so scary. And I just want to thank you for, you know, being so honest about your own issues. I'm sure many people can relate. I can relate. You know, I've been trapped in a hotel room watching TikTok videos for 3 hours in the middle of the night. I mean, it's just crazy. But keep in mind that one of the most powerful behavioral modifiers for our kids is what they see us doing. They will model us more than they will change their behavior in response to what we tell them. So we really need to model the behavior on our devices that we want our kids to see. So this is things like making sacred times when no one is on their device, or setting limits at the end of the day when everybody will put their device potentially in something like a kitchen safe and people will be off for the night, or even cutting Wi-Fi from the house at a certain time. There are devices that you can attach to your phone so it can't transmit or receive, so you can put it on lockdown. So we are beginning collectively to come up with technological aids to help combat the engineering behind these devices and these digital media that are intended to keep us scrolling and swiping. So, I mean, just keep playing around with it, experimenting with things. Let your values for wanting to be a good mom drive you, because that's a powerful motivator.
I just wanted to pause this really quick to add something. I did try to do this dopamine detox maybe this spring. And I have definitely, I definitely want to do some videos about this, because in talking to my counselor about a dopamine detox, there are certain things that you have to take into consideration if you have ADHD and you're dopamine deficient, that it all depends on the person. It depends on your ADHD. So it's not necessarily good for everybody. And if you do want to do it, maybe there's a modified way to do it. So, because there is hyperactive ADHD, there is inattentive ADHD like me. And with the inattentive, at least in my situation, or maybe me particularly, doing a detox, I don't want to say is bad, but it comes with its own challenges, because ADHD in general is dopamine deficient and tends to be, and that's why we tend to be more prone to addiction in general. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, but I do think this is a really good idea, and I'm glad that this is being discussed and people are starting to look at this now. Hopefully I can do some content in the future about that and my experience and get some more information. But what they were talking about as far as the companies intentionally making the video games addictive, I actually found some information about that. I will, when I do content on this, I'll find the another content creator who's done a lot of work on this, and I'll share that information with you. But yeah, they have these organizations, they make a lot of money on specifically video games, and they basically hire, I can't remember if they're called experiential psychologists or psychiatrists. They basically, reading the job postings for these psychiatrists or psychologists to come work for these companies is wild. They are phrased very carefully, but you can tell they're like, we want to enhance the experience for the viewer, for the user of our products, so they keep coming back more and more and more, and they can't live without us, something like that. And maybe not like that exactly, but, and then they also said, which I found a little scary, we also want to enhance the experience for all of our employees. What can we do to make them want to stay here? And I'm like, when does this get into the territory of brainwashing? You know what I mean? Like, they, in so many words, said that they're actually trying to get people addicted. And they're hiring professionals in psychology to create products that are addictive. It's how they make their money. The more you play, the more commercials that get played. And even the ones who say you don't have to watch the commercials, if you want to make that next level, or you want to get through this harder level, you have to watch a commercial, and they make money. So they know what they're doing. That's definitely something they had touched on that a minute ago. And I didn't mean to stop this and be talking for a while, but I think that that is very, very important. Especially if you have ADHD and you're dopamine deficient to begin with, we have an almost built-in vulnerability for addictions of all kinds. So for me, it may not be drugs and alcohol, because I can't have them. I get so sick. I have some bad reaction. But I kid you not, last night I was playing video games for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I did not move. And all of their little bells and whistles that they developed to be deficient, they actually have documents that are, you know, memos and internal documents from these companies that discuss how they want to target the frontal lobes. And when I remember talking to my counselor about this, and I'm like, they're almost directly going after ADHD folks, even if they're not trying to, because that's where we have a vulnerability, right? So yeah, I think that this is a really good conversation to have in the future. I'm probably, just even with all of you guys, you know, I would love to talk more about this, because you can't avoid it. We're already dopamine deficient. And so that is a very, very tricky thing. Like, how do we navigate this world that we live in now, where everything's instant? Everything is, you know, satisfaction, dopamine, attention, bells and whistles, this, that, and the other. How do you manage your ADHD with social media and video games and all these things throwing themselves at you 24/7? Anyway, some important thoughts, and I would love to get feedback from you guys of how, if you are fellow ADHD friends, how any of this has impacted you, and if you struggle more than people around you, or if you've had a particularly hard time dealing with either digital detox or just dopamine detox. For me, I have more than just the symptoms she's talking about having a detox. I'm tired. Like, I don't have enough dopamine. I have the inattentive kind. So I don't have that inner restlessness. I will just sleep all the time. I don't have that get up and go. I actually need more of it. I need, you know, exercise and diet. It's never really enough though. So I'll keep trying different things. I'll keep you guys in the loop. As if I find something that is helpful or any hacks for any of these, I'll definitely let you know. But yeah, this is probably just about over, and I'll play the last bit right now.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for the free sesh. I always say, I jokingly say I do this show so I can get free therapy.
Yeah, why not?
It's a wonderful tool for me and for everybody out there who's watching. So we really appreciate your time. You were so nice and walking us through this rather big topic. I would tell people to follow you on social media, which I generally do at the end of these shows. But guess what, guys? Dr. Anna is not on social because she knows enough. She knows.
I wouldn't be able to handle it. I wouldn't be able to handle it. It would be. I'd be immediately sucked in. Like I'd disappear.
It's really tough.
I would functionally disappear from my life. So.
Right. It's really hard. Doctor, thank you so much for being here. Everyone check out DOPAMINE Nation, and you can even get the DOPAMINE Nation workbook to help work through some of these things. So thank you so much. And remember, you can listen to this episode and access our entire library wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search Mom to Mom with Maria Sansone, or you can scan the QR code that you see here on the screen. All right, that does it for me. I'll see you back here next week on Mom to Mom.